I guess I should start by saying that I never really expected to be in this situation. My name is Mike, and I was married to Sarah for 5 years. We had what I thought was a pretty good marriage, or at least I did until everything fell apart. Looking back, I can see the warning signs now, but at the time I was too wrapped up in my own life to notice. You know how it is. Work keeps you busy and you trust your partner, right? Well, that trust was about to be shattered. Sarah had always been a bit of a social butterfly, flitting from one friend to another, organizing brunches and happy hours like it was her full-time job. I admired her for it. She was passionate and vibrant. But lately, there was something off about her. Her phone would buzz incessantly, and she would always have to step outside to take calls. I brushed it off as just her being social, but it started to gnaw at me. The first real sign that things were changing came when she hired a personal chef, a guy named Jake. I wasn't thrilled about the idea at first. We could barely afford to eat out, let alone hire someone to cook for us. But Sarah insisted, claiming it was a way to treat herself after a tough week at work. I rolled my eyes but didn't say anything because let's be honest, who doesn't like a good home-cooked meal? At first, Jake was just a guy who made great dinners. I'd come home to the smell of roasted chicken or stir-fried vegetables, and I'll admit, it was pretty nice. But after a while, I started noticing the way Sarah looked at him. The lingering laughs, the whispers, the way her eyes sparkled when he walked in. That gut feeling of doubt crept back in, but I pushed it down, convincing myself I was overreacting. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home unannounced. I thought I'd surprise Sarah, maybe snag a plate of whatever gourmet meal Jake had whipped up. I opened the door and froze. The kitchen was filled with the smell of garlic and herbs, but the sight was what made my blood run cold. Jake was leaning against the counter, his arm casually draped around Sarah's shoulders. They were laughing. Leaning in too close for my comfort. I should have turned around, but I couldn't. I just stood there, rooted to the floor, watching the betrayal unfold right in front of me. When they noticed me, the laughter stopped abruptly. Sarah's face paled and Jake straightened up, suddenly all business. "Mike, you're home early," she exclaimed, trying to mask the tension in her voice. It felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I remember just staring at them, trying to process what I'd just seen. I felt sick, angry, and completely blindsided. "Are you two having fun?" I managed to choke out, my voice laced with disbelief. Her face shifted from surprise to panic in an instant. "Mike, it's not what it looks like," she started, her words tumbling out. "Jake was just helping me with dinner. You know how it can be in the kitchen." But the way she avoided my gaze told me everything. I wasn't stupid. The intimacy was undeniable, and I could feel the anger rising like bile in my throat. "Helping you?" I shot back, incredulous. "This isn't just about dinner, Sarah. I saw you too. Don't lie to me." The confrontation felt surreal, like I was watching a scene from a movie instead of living it. The excuses poured out of her like an old faucet. She tried to say it was innocent, that I was being paranoid. She claimed Jake was just a friend, someone to share her love for cooking with. But deep down, I knew it was a lie. I could feel the truth lurking in the shadows, and the betrayal hung in the air like a thick fog. As she continued to defend herself, my mind raced. I felt anger bubble up, but somewhere beneath that was an immense sadness, a sense of loss for the love I thought we had. I had loved her so deeply, and now it was disintegrating before my eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. "You need to be honest with me, Sarah. This isn't just about food. I can see the way you look at him. You have feelings for him, don't you?" The words hung there, heavy and suffocating. Her silence was deafening. I could see the flicker of guilt cross her face, and in that moment I knew what I felt for her, what I thought we had built together, was crumbling like dried leaves underfoot. "It's not like that, Mike," she finally replied, her voice trembling. "You don't understand." But I did understand. I understood that love could turn into betrayal, that trust could dissolve into lies. And in that moment, I realized I had to make a choice about my future. That night, as I lay in bed, facing the wall, I knew I had to confront the reality of our situation. I felt like my heart was being crushed under the weight of her betrayal. The trust was gone, and I was left with a hollow feeling that I couldn't shake. I was filled with confusion, sadness, and a growing resolve to not let her have the last word. The next day, I decided I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had to take control of my life again. I needed a plan. A plan that would not only help me heal but also put me back in the driver's seat. And as I thought about my options, a little voice in my head began to take shape. It was a voice of empowerment, whispering that I could turn this entire situation around. The next few days felt like an emotional roller coaster. I spent most of my time at work, burying myself in projects and meetings. It was easier to focus on spreadsheets than to think about Sarah and the mess our lives had become. But every moment I was home, the reality of our situation crashed down on me like a tidal wave. I couldn't escape the thoughts of what was happening between her and Jake, the way they had laughed together, the intimacy that felt so foreign to me. I had to do something. The anguish inside me morphed into determination. I started thinking about my options. I could confront Sarah again, demand answers, or I could walk away entirely, cut my losses, and leave her to whatever life she wanted with Jake. But there was another option. What if I took control of my own life in a different way? What if I found pleasure and satisfaction in something I had always been interested in but never pursued? That's when I decided to channel my pain into something creative, cooking. It seemed absurd at first, considering Jake was now the cooking king in our house, but I felt a spark of defiance surge through me. If Sarah was going to have an affair with my chef, I could become my own gourmet. I stepped into the kitchen and decided to reclaim it. I started small, just trying to replicate some of the dishes I had seen Jake whip up. I rummaged through the pantry, pulling out spices and ingredients, and began experimenting. The first night was a disaster. I burned a pan of chicken and accidentally added too much salt to the pasta, but I felt a sense of exhilaration. I was doing something for myself, taking back my own agency. I watched YouTube videos, read cookbooks, and even joined an online cooking class. I learned how to make sauces from scratch, chop vegetables like a pro, and experiment with flavors. I found myself enjoying the process, relishing the satisfaction of creating something from nothing. I wasn't just trying to outcook Jake, I was rediscovering myself. My evenings began to transform. Instead of coming home to the smell of Jake's cooking and feeling resentment bubble up, I started inviting friends over for dinner parties. They were small at first, just a couple of friends to taste test my creations, but it quickly blossomed into a fun weekly event where I showcased my growing culinary skills. I could see the joy in their faces as they savored my dishes, and their compliments fueled my fire. As I grew more confident in the kitchen, I started to realize how much I had put aside for Sarah. My own interests and passions had taken a back seat for too long. I was reclaiming my life, and it felt liberating. I felt empowered, and a lightness started to creep back into my heart as the bitterness of betrayal began to fade. But Sarah was still in the background, and we had to face one another eventually. One evening, after a particularly successful dinner party, I came home to find her waiting for me in the living room. She was wearing that worried look I had grown accustomed to, and I felt a mix of anger and sympathy. I didn't want to feel sorry for her, but a part of me still cared. "Mike, can we talk?" she said, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded, feeling a mix of dread and anticipation. "Sure, let's talk. I've been thinking about everything, about us," she started, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I know I messed up, I don't want to lose you." I crossed my arms, trying to maintain my composure. "You already messed up, Sarah. You chose to bring someone else into our home, into our lives. How can I trust you again?" "I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. It spiraled out of control," she said, her voice cracking. "Jake was there for me during a tough time, and I let it go too far." Her excuses felt like a slap in the face. "Too far? You don't get to minimize this, Sarah. You cheated on me, you betrayed my trust." The anger bubbled back up, threatening to spill over. I know, but I want to make it work. I will do anything to fix this," she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. "No," I said firmly, cutting her off. "You can't just expect everything to go back to normal because you regret your choices. It doesn't work like that." In that moment, I felt a wave of clarity wash over me. I wasn't willing to go back to the status quo, to rebuild something that had already been shattered. Sure, I still had feelings for her, but I realized that I needed to protect myself first. Look, Sarah, I continued, taking a deep breath. I've been working on some things for myself, and I think it's best if we take a break. I need time to think about what I really want. Her face fell, and I could see the realization hit her. Break, she echoed, her voice small. Yeah, I need to figure out if I can ever trust you again or if I'm better off alone. I've started to find joy in cooking again, and I want to focus on that for now. She stared at me for a moment, processing my words. I saw anger flicker across her face before she quickly masked it with sorrow. You're just going to walk away after everything. I'm not walking away from love, I'm walking away from betrayal. You chose this path, and now I have to choose mine. The conversation left me feeling drained but also strangely empowered. I had stood up for myself, and that meant something. I was starting to feel like I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. I didn't know what the future held, but I was determined to make it bright, whether that meant healing and reconciling with Sarah or moving on completely. I was learning to take care of myself, and it felt good. But little did I know, that was just the beginning of a new chapter. With each meal I created, I was not just cooking. I was laying down a foundation for a new life, one where I wouldn't just survive but thrive. In the weeks that followed, the distance between Sarah and me grew. I began to find solace in my cooking, turning it into a passion that I never knew I had. I subscribed to gourmet cooking magazines, watched countless cooking shows, and even started posting my creations on social media. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Friends and followers applauded my ambitious dishes, and I relished the attention. It felt good to be recognized for something I was good at, something that was entirely my own, unrelated to Sarah or our past. Meanwhile, Sarah tried her best to reach out. I could see her messages, her attempts to rekindle what we once had, but I didn't respond. I had to set boundaries. I needed to focus on me. As much as my heart ached for the love we once shared, I wasn't willing to go back to being the doormat. The thought of Jake still loomed large in my mind, and my anger simmered just below the surface. I couldn't risk going back. One Saturday, I decided to host another dinner party, this time with a theme, an Italian night. I spent hours preparing homemade pasta, marinating chicken in garlic and herbs, and whipping up a rich marinara sauce. The kitchen felt like my sanctuary, a place where I could pour out all the feelings I had bottled up inside. As I kneaded the dough, I felt the tension release from my shoulders. When my friends arrived, the atmosphere was electric. Laughter filled the room as we toasted with glasses of Chianti, sharing stories and enjoying the delicious food I had prepared. I felt a sense of pride watching everyone savor my cooking. It was liberating to see them enjoying the fruits of my labor, and for those few hours I felt truly happy. As the night wound down, my friend Lisa pulled me aside. "Mike, I've been meaning to ask you something," she said, her voice a bit hesitant. "Have you thought about dating again?" The question caught me off guard. Honestly, not really. I'm still trying to process everything with Sarah. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. "You deserve to be happy, she said gently. "You've poured so much into this new journey, and you shouldn't shut yourself off from love entirely. There are good people out there." I nodded, but I felt a rush of anxiety at the thought of dating. The idea of opening up to someone new was daunting. I still had a lot of healing to do, and the scars from Sarah's betrayal were fresh. "Maybe someday," I replied, forcing a smile. "But right now, I just want to focus on cooking and figuring out what I want in life." As we cleaned up the kitchen, I could shake Lisa's words. The thought of moving on was both exciting and terrifying. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I felt a glimmer of hope that someday I could be. A few days later, I was pleasantly surprised to receive an invitation to a local cooking class. It was being hosted by a well-known chef in the area, and I figured it could be a great opportunity to learn and meet new people. I signed up, feeling a rush of excitement. The night of the class, I walked into the bustling kitchen filled with people chopping, stirring, and laughing. I felt a sense of camaraderie that was infectious. The chef, a charismatic woman named Mia, was energetic and full of passion as she guided us through the evening's menu. We made risotto, grilled vegetables, and for dessert, a decadent tiramisu. As I worked alongside my classmates, I felt alive. The atmosphere was electric with creativity and laughter, and I started to realize just how much I had missed being around people who shared my interests. It was in that class that I made connections with fellow food lovers, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. After the class, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Rachel, who shared my enthusiasm for cooking. We hit it off quickly, discussing our favorite dishes and culinary adventures. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and I found myself laughing and enjoying her company more than I had expected. As the weeks turned into months, I continued to attend cooking classes, and Rachel became a regular companion. We explored different cuisines together, experimented with recipes, and shared tips. I could feel myself healing, letting go of the pain Sarah had caused me, and I started to entertain the idea of possibly dating again. But the thought of Sarah still lingered. She would occasionally text me, asking if we could talk, but I ignored her messages. I needed to keep my distance. I didn't want the past creeping back into my life, especially as I was finally beginning to enjoy the present. One evening, while Rachel and I were cooking together at my place, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and there stood Sarah, looking pale and somewhat defeated. My heart raced as a mix of emotions flooded through me. "Mike, can we talk?" she asked, her voice pleading. I glanced back at Rachel, who was watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. "This isn't a good time, Sarah," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. But she pushed her way in and I hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment. "Please, just give me a minute," she insisted, her eyes glimmering with urgency. I stepped aside and Sarah entered, her gaze darting to Rachel before focusing back on me. "I know you've moved on," she said, her voice breaking. "But I need to explain myself. I can't let you walk away without telling you the truth." Rachel looked at me uncertainly, and I knew I had to decide what to do next. Did I want to hear what Sarah had to say, or was this just a manipulation to pull me back into her world? I felt the tension in the room, and my heart raced as I tried to make sense of what was happening. "Okay, talk," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But this doesn't change anything." As Sarah began to speak, I braced myself for a wave of emotions that I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Would I regret hearing her out, or would it offer me the closure I needed? In that moment, I felt like the decisions I made could alter the course of my life, and I was determined to navigate it on my own terms. Sarah took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she gathered her thoughts. "Mike, I know I messed up. I've spent the last few months thinking about everything. The affair, the lies, the way I hurt you. I want you to know that I truly regret it. It was a moment of weakness, a stupid mistake that spiraled out of control," she began, her voice wavering. "Regret doesn't change what you did, Sarah," I interrupted, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You chose to betray me, and that's not something that just goes away with apologies." "I understand that," she said quickly, her eyes welling with tears. "But I've been going to therapy, trying to figure out why I did it. I realized I was so focused on my own desires that I didn't recognize how much I was hurting you. I was selfish, and I lost sight of what truly mattered." Behind me, Rachel shifted uncomfortably, her presence a stark reminder of the new life I was trying to build. I glanced back at her, trying to gauge her reaction. Her expression was a mix of sympathy and concern, and I could tell she wanted to support me but didn't know how. "Okay," I said cautiously, turning my attention back to Sarah. "So what changed? Why now? Why after all this time?" "I've had to face the consequences of my actions," Sarah continued, her voice stronger now. "I lost you, and I realized just how much I took you for granted. I've watched you start to live your life again, and it's made me realize how deeply I hurt you. I want to show you that I can be the partner you deserve. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." The words hung heavy in the air, and I felt a conflict brewing within me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to take her at her word. But the other part, the part that had been betrayed and humiliated, was hesitant to allow her back in. "Trust is not something you can just ask for, Sarah. It's built over time and you shattered it," I said firmly. "You can't just waltz back into my life because you've had a change of heart. I need to know I can rely on you." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I'm not asking for a free pass. I just want you to know that I'm willing to fight for us if you'll let me. I don't expect you to take me back right away, but I want you to see that I'm serious about changing." Rachel stood silently behind me and I turned to her, searching for guidance. She had been a lifeline during this tumultuous period and I valued her input. "What do you think?" I asked her, my voice low. Rachel hesitated, glancing between Sarah and me. "That's a really big decision, Mike. You have to do what's best for you. If you feel like you can eventually forgive her, maybe it's worth listening to what she has to say. But remember, trust doesn't just come from words, it comes from actions." I nodded, absorbing Rachel's advice. "Sarah, I need time. I can't just forgive you overnight. It's going to take a lot of work to rebuild what we had, if that's even possible." "I understand," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "I just want the chance to prove that I can be better. I miss you, Mike. I miss us." The sincerity in her voice pulled at my heartstrings, but I couldn't ignore the anger that bubbled just below the surface. I was angry at her for what she had done, but I was also angry at myself for still having feelings for her. "Let me think about it," I finally said, my voice steady. "But I need you to know that I won't entertain this relationship as it was. It will be different this time, or it won't happen at all." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with hope and regret. "I can accept that. I'll give you space. Just promise me you'll consider it." As I watched her leave the apartment, I felt a whirlwind of emotions crash over me. Confusion, anger, sadness, but also a thread of hope. Was it even possible to rebuild our relationship? And what about Rachel? Where did she fit into this new equation? The next few days were a blur. I spent hours contemplating my feelings, cooking up storm after storm in the kitchen, each dish representing a different facet of my emotions. I found myself torn between the past and the potential of a new future. Rachel and I continued to spend time together, cooking and talking about life and our aspirations. I found joy in our companionship, and I could sense a blossoming chemistry. But every time I began to open my heart to Rachel, the thought of Sarah would creep back in, clouding my judgment. One evening, as Rachel and I prepared a Thai curry, she turned to me and asked, "So, how are you feeling about Sarah? Do you think you want to give her another chance?" I sighed, stirring the pot slowly. "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe that people can change, that maybe she's serious. But another part of me is terrified of being hurt again. I just don't think I can trust her right now." Rachel nodded, her expression sympathetic. "You deserve someone who values you and is honest with you. If Sarah truly wants to change, she'll have to prove it to you over time. But don't close yourself off to the possibility of happiness with someone else either." As we finished cooking and sat down to eat, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. Rachel was kind, supportive, and genuinely interested in my life. It was refreshing, and I found myself laughing and enjoying the moment. But as the night wore on and I cleaned up, Sarah's words echoed in my mind. "I miss you, Mike. I miss us." Could I really overlook the hurt she caused? Would it be fair to dive back into that old life when I was finally starting to experience the joy of a new life? I knew I had decisions to make. I had to confront my feelings, not just for Sarah but for myself. I had to figure out what I truly wanted before I could let anyone back into my heart. And as I stood in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the meal we just shared, I felt a flicker of resolve. Whatever path I chose, it was time to prioritize my own happiness above all else. The journey was far from over, and I was determined to navigate it with intention and strength. I just hoped I could find my way without losing myself in the process. The days rolled on, a whirlwind of emotions and decisions, as I grappled with the idea of rekindling my relationship with Sarah. I spent countless nights poring over my feelings, wrestling with the memories of betrayal, but also peeking into the possibilities of forgiveness. I didn't want to make any decisions lightly. I had come too far in my journey of self-discovery to throw it all away because of nostalgia or guilt. Rachel had been an anchor during this tumultuous time. Our bond grew deeper each day as we cooked together and shared our life stories. I was beginning to see her in a new light, not just as a friend, but as someone who genuinely cared for me. But the thought of Sarah still loomed over me, a specter of my past that I couldn't seem to shake off completely. One evening, while we were preparing a chicken adobo, Rachel turned to me and said, "You know, Mike, I really admire how you've handled everything. It's not easy to navigate through such a complicated situation." I shrugged, feeling both flattered and uncomfortable. "Thanks, but it's not something I'm proud of. I'm just trying to figure it out, you know." "I get that," she replied softly. "But you've shown a lot of strength. Not everyone can take a painful experience and turn it into something positive. You're growing, and that's what matters." Her words struck a chord within me. I realized how important it was to focus on my own growth, rather than getting lost in the chaos of my past. I had started to carve out a space for myself, one where I could thrive, and I needed to honor that. But just as I was beginning to feel settled, I got a text from Sarah. "Can we meet? I really need to talk to you." A wave of anxiety washed over me. I had been trying to avoid any interactions that would pull me back into that emotional turmoil. But a small part of me felt compelled to hear her out, to see if she had truly changed or if it was all just another round of excuses. After a moment of deliberation, I decided to meet her. We agreed to meet at a local coffee shop, a neutral ground where the atmosphere was casual yet allowed for serious conversations. I arrived early, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what to expect. Would she try to manipulate me again? Would I even be able to stay calm? When Sarah walked in, she looked different. Gone was the bravado she had when she had confronted me in my apartment. Now she seemed nervous, almost fragile. I motioned for her to join me at a small table in the corner, and as she sat down, I noticed the way her hands shook slightly. "Hi," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," I replied, forcing myself to maintain eye contact, even though I felt a knot of tension building in my stomach. "I appreciate you meeting me," she began, her eyes darting around the cafe before landing back on mine. "I know things have been tense between us, and I wanted to have an honest conversation." "Okay," I responded, keeping my tone neutral. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I've come to realize that I did just betray you. I betrayed myself too," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I was lost in my own insecurities and I took it out on you. I'm truly sorry, Mike. I never meant for it to go this far." I held her gaze, searching for any signs of deception, but all I saw was remorse. "You say that now, but how do I know you'll change? How can I trust you again?" "I know I don't deserve your trust right now," she replied, swallowing hard. "But I'm committed to changing. I've been seeing a therapist and working through my issues. I want to be a better person, not just for you, but for myself. I've realized how much I took you for granted, and I want to show you that I can be the partner you deserve." Her words were earnest, and I felt a flicker of something, hope maybe. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. "You say you want to change, but actions speak louder than words. What are you doing to actually prove it?" "I'm trying to focus on myself and become a better version of me," she said, voice trembling slightly. "I've even started volunteering at a local shelter, helping out with meal prep. It feels good to give back, and it's helping me understand the consequences of my actions on others." I listened intently, trying to gauge her sincerity. The thought of her giving back was a positive sign, but I still had doubts. "That's good to hear, but can you understand why it's so hard for me to consider giving you another chance?" "I do," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "I can't change the past, but I want to share my journey with you. I want to prove to you that I can be trustworthy again. I know it's a long road, but I'm willing to take it." The tension in my chest eased slightly. I was starting to see a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had dreams, passions, and kindness. But could that woman ever exist alongside the one who had hurt me so deeply? As the conversation continued, I found myself torn. The connection we once shared felt faintly alive again, but it was overshadowed by the pain of betrayal. I wanted to believe she could change, but was I ready to risk my heart again? After what felt like an eternity, I finally said, "I need time, Sarah. I can't promise you anything right now. I've started my own journey of healing and I need to see where it leads. I can't just jump back into a relationship without knowing if I can trust you again." "I understand," she replied, visibly relieved but still vulnerable. "I just want you to know that I'm here, ready to put in the effort. I'll give you the space you need." As we parted ways, I felt a mix of emotions, confusion, hope, but also a weight lifting slightly from my shoulders. I wasn't ready to fully embrace her again, but I was open to the possibility of change, both for her and for myself. That evening, I met up with Rachel and I shared what had happened. It was emotional, I said, running my hands through my hair. I can see that she's trying to change, but I'm still not sure if I can trust her. Rachel listened patiently, her expression encouraging. You're doing the right thing by taking your time, Mike. Remember, it's about your happiness first. If she's truly committed to changing, she'll respect your boundaries. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I was beginning to realize that no matter what happened with Sarah, I needed to prioritize my own healing and happiness. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a sense of clarity dawning on me. I was on a path of growth, one that didn't have to be defined by the past. I had the power to choose my future, and I was determined to make decisions that honored the journey I was on. With a deep breath, I closed my eyes, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, whether it was rebuilding my relationship with Sarah or continuing to explore what a future with Rachel could hold. Either way, I knew I was no longer the victim of my circumstances. I was the architect of my own life, and I was ready to build something beautiful. In the days that followed my conversation with Sarah, I found myself in a state of reflection. I was still processing everything, the feelings of betrayal, the potential for forgiveness, and the new connections I had forged. Each day was a new test of my resolve, and while I felt stronger, the emotional scars still lingered. I continued to see Rachel regularly. Our time together was filled with laughter and culinary adventures, and I cherished the way she made me feel, seen and appreciated for who I was. We explored new recipes, discovered local farmers markets, and even took a weekend trip to a food festival in a nearby city. With Rachel, I found joy in the present moment, something I struggled to do when I was with Sarah. But Sarah was never far from my thoughts. She kept her distance after our coffee shop meeting, only reaching out occasionally to check in. I appreciated that she respected my need for space, but I also felt torn. I knew I had to make a decision soon. I had been given the chance to reflect, and now it was time to act. One evening, as I prepared a new dish, a rich beef bourguignon, I received a text from Sarah asking if we could meet again. I hesitated. I was still raw from our last encounter, and I didn't know if I was ready to face her again. But I also realized that I couldn't keep running from the past. I needed closure one way or another. We agreed to meet at a small park where we used to spend time together. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue over everything, and I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. I took a deep breath as I approached the familiar bench where we had shared countless laughs and dreams. When I saw her, she was sitting there, looking small and vulnerable. My heart ached for the girl I had once loved so deeply. "Hey," I said softly, taking a seat beside her. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked up at me and I could see the fear and hope in her eyes. "Thank you for meeting me." "I wanted to hear what you had to say," I replied, trying to maintain a neutral tone. "But I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last spoke." "I have too," she said, her gaze dropping to the ground. "I know I've hurt you deeply, and I don't expect you to just forgive me. But I want you to know that I'm serious about changing. I've been working on myself, taking accountability, going to therapy, and even doing some volunteer work." "I know you're trying," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But trying isn't enough. It's going to take more than just promises. It's going to take action, consistency, and a real commitment to rebuilding trust." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand. I've had to face some hard truths about myself, and I don't want to lose you again. I miss the life we had, but I know it will take time to rebuild it." Silence hung between us, and I could feel my heart racing. I had to be honest with her. "I've also started to find happiness again, Sarah. I've made new connections with people who support me and appreciate me for who I am, people like Rachel." The mention of Rachel felt like a punch in the gut for her. I could see the pain flash across her face, and I immediately regretted bringing her into the conversation. But it was the truth, and it needed to be said. "I'm happy for you," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. You deserve to be happy, I just wish it could be with me. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. I don't want you to think that I'm here to make decisions based on guilt or obligation. I've been on my own journey of self-discovery, and I'm not sure if I can ever truly trust you again. Then what can we do? She asked, desperation creeping into her voice. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove myself. Just give me a chance. Honestly, I need time. I can't keep going back and forth between the past and the present. I want to focus on my own happiness first and foremost. I've started to build a life for myself, and I need to see where that leads me. Sarah looked devastated, and my heart ached for her, but I also knew this was a necessary step in my healing process. If you really care about me, you'll respect my decision, I continued. I can't rush something that needs to take its own course. She nodded slowly, wiping away a tear. I understand. I'll give you the space you need, but I hope you'll consider that I'm committed to working on myself. I truly want to be better, not just for you, but for me too. As we sat there in silence, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I was proud of myself for standing firm, for taking control of my own life. I had survived the storm, and now it was time to embrace the calm that awaited me. After parting ways with Sarah, I returned home and felt a sense of liberation. I had made a decision that honored my journey and allowed me to prioritize my happiness. I was finally ready to let go of the past and embrace the future. In the following weeks, I continued to build my connection with Rachel. We explored more culinary adventures, attended food festivals, and shared our dreams. With her, I felt free to be myself. I realized that I could find joy again and that love didn't have to be tied to my past. I was worthy of happiness, and I was determined to chase it. As I stirred sauce in the kitchen one evening, I reflected on the journey I had been through, the heartache, the betrayal, and the eventual growth. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, vulnerability, and the importance of self-love. I had emerged from the darkness and was ready to build a future that was bright and fulfilling. I wasn't just moving on, I was moving up. And for the first time in a long while, I felt excited about what lay ahead. My heart was open, my spirit was strong, and I was ready to embrace whatever delicious experiences life had to offer.